We will now analyze the baseball salaries using a pivot table. Open the Excel file Baseball Salaries and go to the worksheet Raw Data for Pivot Table. Click on A1 and then insert Pivot Table. Notice how Excel has automatically detected the range of cells that will be the source data for the pivot table. We didn't have to select them. Excel realized where was the start and the end of the table. When you create a pivot table, you must ensure that all of your data is contiguous. You have to have rows and columns next to each other, and also all of your columns must have a title. If you don't have a title, Excel will not be able to create the pivot table. Let's now click on Existing Worksheet, and for location I'm going to type F2, which means that I want the pivot table to be created on cell F2 on the same worksheet. And let's click OK. Excel has now created a canvas for us where we're going to be able to do some analysis on the data. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to check the box for salary, or alternatively you can drag and drop salary and drop it under the values. This is the total amount of salary that is being paid to all baseball players in all teams. Let's format this as a currency, and you will notice that this is consistent to what we found earlier in the descriptive statistics. Let's now check the box for team, which makes the team to go to the row labels, or same as earlier, we could just drag and drop. And now we can see the total amount of salary being paid by team. For example, the Arizona Diamondbacks pays $53.6 million in salaries to all of their players. Each team may have a different number of players, and this may be changing significantly the total amount of money that they're being paid. Let's change then to look at the average by clicking here on the arrow and then Value Field Settings, and then select Average and click OK. We are now seeing at the average that each of the teams pay to all of their players. The data in this state is difficult to analyze. It's difficult to find which is the least and which is the highest. So let's sort it by clicking here, right click, then sort, and then smallest to largest. What we have done now is we sort the data, and we can see that the Kansas City Royals are the least paid players on average, and we have the New York Yankees being the highest paid. We could now take a look at which are the specific players and how much they're being paid at the New York Yankees by making double click on the amount $6.8 million. And look who we found here at the very bottom. This is the $32 million that we knew was the maximum salary paid to a baseball player, and it goes to Alex Rodriguez. This is the player that was affecting largely our mean. I'm going to delete this new worksheet that Excel created when I'll double click, and I will go back to the original pivot table. Let's now understand which is the position that on average pays the best. Let's then uncheck team and check position. So now we have position under the row tables. And one more time, I'm going to sort this data to be able to see it in order. Now I'm doing it the other way around, from largest to the smallest. The designated hitter is the highest paid position with an average of $7.1 million. Notice how, despite Alex Rodriguez being the highest paid player, still the designated hitters on average are being paid the most. Remember that Alex Rodriguez is a third baseman, so this average of 4.3 is being affected by him. Let's see how much this outlier is pulling the average of the third baseman. So remember, this is 4.3 at the moment when Alex Rodriguez is included. Let's bring the team to the report filter by dragging and dropping it here. This time I don't need it under the row labels. Instead, I'm going to put it under the report filter. When we do that, Excel creates this drop-down menu which shows all of the teams, and we can select some of them. I'm going to check the box for select multiple items, and I'm going to locate the New York Yankees, and I'm going to uncheck their box. This excludes any player that is playing for the New York Yankees. When I do that, Alex Rodriguez gets excluded, and notice how the third baseman dropped to 3.7. This is around $560,000 US that Alex Rodriguez was pulling the average higher. And still, after removing all of the players from the New York Yankees, which seems to be outliers, still the designated hitter is the position that pays the most. Let's now compare teams in the cities of Chicago and Los Angeles. To do that, let's go to team. I'm going to unselect all of the teams by clicking 2 times here on select. So now I have nothing selected. And I'm going to write here the word Chicago. And as I start typing, Excel filters out all of the cities that include that part of the word. And I'm going to click OK. I'm going to repeat that by going here, and now I'm going to type the word Los Angeles. Now Excel has found 2 teams in Los Angeles, and because I had selected earlier the Chicago teams, I'm going to check the box for Add Current Selection to filter. I now have 4 teams selected. Let's now bring the team from report filter to column labels. And what this does, it creates a cross table showing the teams as columns and the positions as rows, and I'm showing the average that's being paid to each of the teams. I don't need the totals at this stage, so I'm going to remove them or hide them by doing right click anywhere on the pivot table, then pivot table options. Then I'm clicking on totals and filters, and then on checking the box for show grand totals for rows as well for columns. Now the totals have disappeared, and you could bring them back by following the same procedure. This is quite helpful because in the analysis that I'm going to do next, those totals were interfering with the analysis. And still this is difficult to understand, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a heat map by selecting all of the amounts that are here, and then we're going to go to the Home tab, Conditional Formatting, Color Scales, and then the first one which reads green, yellow, red color scale. This is a very useful tool to quickly analyze data. In a heat map, the more the green means that the higher the value. So these ones over here would be the highest values in this table. When the color is more on the yellow side, it means that it's closer to the median. And when the cell starts getting reddish, that means that those are the least paid positions. Now let's look, by analyzing at this data, let's think about how fair the sport is. We can see that a third baseman has a full range of spectrum of colors. It is the highest paid position for these 4 cities are $14.6 million US, and the same position but for a different team is also the least amount paid among all of these teams and players at $415,000 US only. Remember, this was the minimum wage imposed by the MLB. You could argue that this is because Los Angeles doesn't have such a good budget. However, notice how between those two, the Chicago Cubs and the Los Angeles Angels, the roles are inverted for the shortstop. Chicago Cubs is paying one of the lowest amounts, very close to the minimum wage, while Los Angeles is paying for the same position 7 times as much as the Chicago Cubs, at $3 million US. It seems that baseball is not a fair game in terms of positions or place. It would be important to understand what drives the salaries of a player, and my intuition tells me that it must be something regardless the fans, how many people really like those players, the popularity and fame around the players. However, this is only my intuition and I have no data to prove it. This is a qualitative analysis that I'm looking, basing my facts on looking at these 4 things and paying attention solely to the salaries. In order to be able to prove if fan popularity is related to the players' salaries, we would need to do quantitative research. For example, running surveys to baseball fans and asking them about who their favorite players are, and then comparing those salaries in the data set, and then running regression would be a good place to start. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. This is the end of it, and now I encourage you to try your own on pivot tables and answering the set of questions in the last step of the guide. Thank you.